Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot believe it. I am very happy to report that Bungie and Activision have split, and it's a tremendous win for the gaming community. I think most people will start to realize this as they look into it. But especially if you're newer to gaming, maybe you don't even remember Bungie, how they were when they weren't with Activision, which is a terrible thing, by the way, to not see where Bungie was back with like the original Xbox, but especially the 360 when they became very in tune with the community. And they were very much interested in what the community had to say. Pretty much always. It was a much better time than what we've seen recently with them and Activision creating Destiny. Now, let's take a look at this because we do have an actual statement from Bungie posted on their website here, and then we also had Kotaku report as well. Jason Schreier actually put out a tweet earlier in the day kind of alluding to this coming, and I didn't know it was going to drop like immediately. Like, he talked about it, and then maybe a few hours, maybe even just an hour later, all of a sudden, boom, Activision and Bungie split. So this is what they posted here. When we first launched our partnership with Activision in 2010, the gaming industry was in a pretty different place. As an independent studio setting out to build a brand new experience, we wanted a partner willing to take a big leap of faith with us. We had a vision for Destiny that we believed in, but to launch a game of that magnitude, we needed the support of an established publishing partner. They talk about how with Activision, they were able to do this, and then they go down a bit further, and they talk about how despite issues with Forsaken, they say that, as you see here, we've learned and listened and leaned into what we believe our players want from a general Destiny experience. Rest assured, there is more of that on the way. Now, you might be wondering, why are they talking about Destiny if they just split with Activision? Surely that means that Activision will probably keep the rights to Destiny and maybe do some other stuff to it, as it seems that they clashed quite a bit behind the scenes. We'll talk about that in a second. Well, no, apparently Bungie is actually keeping the rights to Destiny, which shocked me. That very much so surprised me to hear that Bungie is keeping the rights to Destiny. And by the way, if you're a fan of Destiny right now, despite all of the stuff that's happened, because trust me, they have, most likely Activision, as we've seen, has berated and abused that community badly. Like, really, it always felt like one step forward and two steps backwards with Destiny 2, especially. Like, very much so Destiny 2. Destiny 1, not as much, but Destiny 2 felt really bad most times in terms of the way that the bigger parent company treated the fans. And it was weird because we'd have these glimmering moments where it seemed like Bungie in particular was interested in the community to the point where they were hiding things in like the real world and stuff for people to come find. It was very clear that Bungie and Activision had differences of opinions on how the game should be run. And it did very much feel like at one point in time, Activision was pretty much completely calling the shots, and it was pretty much Bungie who was there for the ride. And as they've detailed, it had a lot to do with, of course, the money that was needed to get Destiny going. So, Bungie and Activision split. And Bungie keeps Destiny. That is outstanding. It really is. This is the write-up from Kotaku. Both of these links are down in the description. We'll check them out further. And you can even see that Jason Schreier mentions that there were years of tension even before the game came out. And I'm not at all shocked to hear about this, like, at all, because back with Halo 3, as probably the best example, Bungie was very much so invested in the community. They got to the point where they were making up game types because the community latched onto them from things like Red versus Blue, which was a extremely popular Halo parody, essentially. We had things like Griffball get created. I think it was back in 2008. And because the community was doing it and having so much fun with it, Bungie decided to turn it into an entire game type that we could play with matchmaking. It was like a custom game type that they made, inserted into the game, and all of a sudden we can go play Griffball, which was created by Red versus Blue. They were listening back then, but it felt like they weren't listening as much with Destiny. Another great example, and it was something that was very, very fascinating to me, was back during Halo 3. You might have remembered this. Randomly, they would announce that they would have developer nights where developers in Bungie would actually jump into matchmaking and play against the community. The way you would know this is, at the time, if they had flaming heads, like their heads would be on fire, you would know you're playing against the developer, and if you beat them, they would actually unlock that flaming head for you. Like, you would get to just have a flaming head because you beat one of the developers. It was pretty cool. It was just a really neat thing, and at the time, they were doing a lot of stuff to where we were sharing footage back and forth, which was still pretty new at the time, back in 2007, 2008, where we could save footage, save maps, even share them online. They had DLC for Halo 3, but it didn't feel forced, and it felt like we all really wanted it, and it was welcome. Certainly not like the DLC that's a part of Destiny 2, with the microtransactions and the throttling, and one thing after the other. It never felt like Bungie. The gunplay in the game felt like Bungie, but the game and the way that they interacted with the community and the treated the community never felt like Bungie. So this is an outstanding development. Like, I'm so happy right now with this, because I want to see what Bungie can do when they self-publish. And they do mention that there is risk involved here with self-publishing, and that's something I understand. But I also believe that a lot of people who played Destiny 2 and got turned off by Destiny 2 will come back. Like, I think, because especially if they, or just Destiny in general, let's say Destiny 2 and Activision stuff are still doing whatever to that, but let's say they take the Destiny name, because they do talk about the roadmap still being here and they still, playing around with it and stuff, but let's say they actually take Destiny and they make a Destiny 3, and Activision's name is nowhere on that thing, right? It's just Bungie. I think a lot of people will give that series a second look. Right? Because, let's face it, we've caught on to Activision's game at this point, haven't we? I think all of us have. They've taken so many series and really damaged them in the gamer's eye, at least to the point where we're suspicious about it when Activision's name is on it. That's why when Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice had Activision's name on it, I was also a bit suspicious of that game all of a sudden. But we see Call of Duty has been beaten into the ground, right? To where it's sometimes a joke online at this point, right? Whereas back in the day, when it first came out on things like PC, and then even Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare, those were awesome. Like, when those came out, people were so on board with those. And here we are now, and people are just like, oh, another Call of Duty. Wonder what kind of microtransactions and loot boxes will be in that thing, right? And it's just kind of what they've done. Look at Blizzard. Blizzard goes to BlizzCon, and they announce a mobile game. But was it really Blizzard, or was it Activision showed up there? Because I feel like it was Activision. Something else to keep an eye on with Bungie is we also know that NetEase has invested $100 million into Bungie to create a new IP, a new game of some kind. And that's going to be fun to see, because I'm sure that's what Bungie is very much so invested in right now, is creating a game that they'll probably take about, I would say, 40 to 50 million to create it, and then that leaves them with a fair amount of money to market the thing. So if you were a fan of Bungie, like I was, I was a massive fan of Bungie back in the Halo days. I would read their blogs all the time, even back when they weren't online with Halo 2 and 3. They would still post up community updates online with Halo 1, even though not as many people were listening because it was the early 2000s. I would still go on there and read their blogs and all kinds of stuff, and then they would eventually let us track our stats on their website back in the Halo 2 and Halo 3 days. And so many thousands of hours in Halo that I became a big fan of Bungie, and it was a shame now to see where they've fallen to. But I feel like, being by themselves, I think they can find that light, that rekindle that light that they had before by themselves. But as they say, it's going to be a challenge. So I am absolutely going to be taking a look at what they come out with next, knowing that they'll be self-publishing it. And there won't be a publisher that has to meet demands of investors, right? They won't have that pressure behind them from something like an Activision, where if you make $500 million on a game in its first week, that's not enough because you made that same amount last year. That's what happened with Call of Duty. So I look forward to this. I'll be curious what their new IP is, if it's another shooter. I feel like it probably will be. But that's okay. That's okay. Because to me, right now, Bungie's off on their own, and they have a bit of a clean slate. And we'll finally get to see, because think about it this way. They were with either Microsoft or they were with Activision, right? They had backing from one or the other. I think Microsoft was a little more lenient with them, whereas Activision was apparently clashing with them before Destiny 1 even came out. So this is going to be the first time that we've seen Bungie, with a large investment, by the way, from NetEase, and I guess some other money that they have to do self-publishing with things like, I guess, Destiny, be by themselves, call their own shots. According to even Kotaku, from one source, employees cheered and popped champagne. I get that. Because you don't have Activision, there bugging you about you popping champagne in the office. that is champagne popping worthy. And you know what? This is one of the good stories in gaming. It's a great way, I think, to start off the year in 2019. And I hope they have something to share with us before the year is out. But if not, E3 maybe. I'm keeping an eye on Bungie because I think we're going to get the old Bungie back, and I am very, very excited. But guys, let me know what you think about the Activision Bungie split, because I think it is massive, and I am very excited for this. So let me know what you guys think about this down below. Make sure you like the video if you like it, dislike it if not, and guys, I'll see you in the next video.